Welcome to my ongoing experiment where I interview amazing people in Pro AV, people on a mission to elevate their corner of the industry and share those lessons learned with you. My name is Jeremy Birch, and I'm happy to introduce to you Matt Hams today. Did I say it right? Hams?
Hamas. It's like hammer with an S.
Okay, awesome. Glad I asked. Matt's an AV design engineer with AVI-SPL out of Cleveland, Ohio. He's been with them since, what, 2011, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, as both a project and now a design engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that gives you a unique vantage point on the industry, and I wanted to explore that. But first, let me ask you a couple questions about you. How and when did you get started in AV?
Professionally in the pro AV space in 2006. But if you consider tinkering in junior high making speakers, I'd probably go that far back. Let's see. In the early to mid 90s, maybe late 90s at the latest, I was working in theme park, show control, multimedia production. So that's where I kind of started in that realm, and then got into the pro AV space after that.
How'd you get started first in AV before you went pro? Because you're sort of more sounds like your more informal experience led to your more formal.
Exactly. Yeah, it was just a hobby and a passion for me when I was younger. I got involved with this program called Birch in junior high, which is you got to explore TV studios and various kinds of production. I was, like I said, building my own speakers. I built my own little MIDI audio production studio for fun. That transitioned into, right out of high school, got an internship with Audio Technica in their engineering department, doing speaker microphone testing, a little bit of technical writing for their manuals. So that was all the way back in 1990.
Wow. So are they in your area where you are now? Or?
Yeah, Audio Technica is in Stowe, Ohio, which from our office is maybe 20 minutes away. So,
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So still in touch with them. Actually, one of the engineers that I interned with is still there developing all the new digital stuff now. So
really,
been there for quite a while. Yeah.
Awesome. Who is that?
Bob Green.
Huh. Okay. So obviously, I kind of already spilled the beans that you're currently at AVI-SPL, but in your current role as design engineer. What phase of the projects are you involved in? Is it pre-sales? I know AVI-SPL tends to parse out the engineer role a little more than maybe medium to smaller size companies do, where the engineer is kind of all-encompassing. They're involved from the initial sales walk all the way to commissioning. What phase of the project are you involved in, and what would you say is the overarching impact you would like to have, or you aim to have in that role?
Our office is a little unique in that we do a little bit of everything. A lot of pre-sales design work. So we'll do site surveys. We'll do the initial equipment lists. We typically have our sales guy do the scope so they actually understand what they're presenting to the customer. It's not just all being handed over to them to just pass on to the customer. We'll do the final engineering as well. So we'll do all the nitty-gritty components like you had mentioned in your email, in terms of all the final component selection and making sure we have everything like this back box and this connector and this access point, all the rack components that are necessary. And that can even get involved with, we'll do CAD drawings as well. And we'll even do some field work. We have really, really good techs and PMs and commissioning engineers, but in some very unique cases, I've been out to do, video wall setup and testing, done some immersive solstice when that was really coming around. Some of the newer stuff, I was out there to help commission that kind of stuff too.
Do you still do a fair amount of immersive for wireless presentation?
We're all over the place. It depends on the customer, because some customers, like we'll have energy customers where they have very, very stringent security requirements, and they have devices that have to go through a very long risk management evaluation.
Oh, okay.
So, they don't allow this on their network, or their USB ports are blocked entirely. So, forget ClickShare for that. So it
Yeah,
really depends on the client and their internal requirements. So we're
got it.
pretty much agnostic. I mean, we'll do Air Media, we'll do Barco, Solstice, we're all over the board.
Got it. Got it. Okay, makes sense. Um, Now, in that vein, you've been gracious enough to actually offer for anyone watching this or listening to it a resource that you have developed over the years. You call it the engineering checklist template, um, and it's an Excel sheet. Tell me a little bit about that. How it
Sure.
came to be,
It's just
how
something I
you
put
use it.
together over the years, just in the environment I'm working with a lot of open office spaces and sales. Uh, People coming to your door, phone calls. It's difficult to just really get in the groove sometimes, unless it's in an evening or a weekend, to really focus on a job. So I developed this just to say, just to go through it and make sure we're dotting our I's, we're crossing our T's, everything is there. So I have a column or a section for pre-sales, for making
Hmm.
sure we have everything that's needed in terms of what has the salesperson already provided in terms of any kind of sector information.
Hmm.
What am I looking to obtain in terms of the room requirements? And then
Sure.
there's another column or section that's for all the final engineering. So it's a checklist for me for deliverables to our order team or project managers. Like, did I do a Crestron DM config for this thing, or am I going to get asked for it when they're trying to order the stuff?
Right,
uh,
right.
or a
When,
BIAMP DSP config form, has that been produced? Just
yeah,
all the little details that you have to do on a day-to-day basis. Or have we obtained the IP address from the customer ahead of time,
sure.
assigned to MAC addresses, so our guys aren't going on site and go, oh, we don't even have IP addresses to set this up. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's just been developed over the last probably decade, just from lessons learned, really.
Sure, sure. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, I see it here. It really doesn't take up much. I think it all fits on one page.
Pretty
You,
much.
you
Yeah,
ever
depends
print it
on
up?
how how far you zoom it out, or what
Yeah. How big of a
font size
page you
you got
use?
at.
Yeah,
7-point font.
yeah. It could probably fit on like a 11 by 17 sheet and still be
Yeah.
legible, I'm guessing.
Yep.
But no, it's great. I mean, you're exactly right. It's hard because not all projects go in a sequential order, and you know in with no gaps in between phases, right? So
Right.
it's hard, nigh impossible to remember where you left off on a project, what you had done, what you hadn't done, and
Mhm.
instead of digging through the project folder,
Mhm.
it's easier to actually just keep a checklist like this to keep things from falling through the cracks,
Mhm.
and stay ahead of things. So that's great. Thank you for that. And
Sure.
so that'll be available through the show notes, wherever you're watching this, so you can grab that. um, and we had talked before, Matt, about um, kind of how you your time chunks out in the macro, as far as um, what you do, commissioning. You said you do a little bit of everything.
Mhm.
You said you actually spend about 25% of your time quoting projects, putting together project quotes. Is that still
Yeah,
feel
that still
about
sounds
right?
about right. Mhm.
Okay, okay. And that's commonly referred to as pre-sales engineering, right?
Right.
It falls under that category. Um, at what point? Because most engineers, when they're putting a quote together, they'll put the major parts and pieces in and won't worry about the details, because you don't know if you're going to land the project, right?
Exactly.
You may land, somewhere. It tends to hover between 30 to 50% win ratio of projects quoted to actually won, based on how much bid work a particular integrator does, things like that.
Mhm.
Um, but at what point for you in the design phase do you drill down to those little nitty-gritty details, the mounting accessories, power supplies,
Mhm.
PoE injectors, pre-made cables, all that stuff.
Right. We try to account for some of the really relevant things ahead of time, like you said, the PoE injectors. A lot of times it could be just a little 5-port PoE crush-on switch. Um, or we'll try to have at least a placeholder for something. Like if there's, say, for example, this isn't a small piece, but a lectern or a podium, where it's going to take a committee of 6 people to take a month to figure out what they want to do for the finish, etc. We'll have a budget in there, and then we'll work it out as, if it's awarded, and then we'll work with whoever's responsible for the finish and such. And God bless Atlantic for having a frame and then a finished kit, so that helps.
You don't have to wait for you to decide to actually build the system that goes inside it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, because that used to hold up the works pretty badly. But we try to at least have line items in there on the equipment list, so to cover that stuff as close as possible. Or we'll have a missed budget in there for some of the pre-mades until we can get a closer handle on exactly where everything is going.
Right.
Most of the stuff we try to get it pretty tight up front. And try to be as accurate as possible up front. And again, Middle Atlantic is great with their site. I'm not, sponsored by them or, get any feedback from them. I've been using their stuff long enough, and I love their website because you can pick whatever rack you're using, and then they have the compatible accessories right there by tab. You can go boom, 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 pick what you need, put it in your equipment list, and you're done.
Right, and that just covers your metal rack accessories, right? Not counting, that doesn't even scratch the surface of the actual product accessories, right?
Right.
What are the under table, mounting gears you have to buy separately for, for this.
Yeah, and that's why I've got that checklist too. Is like, have I, if I have to, not if, but when I get pulled away on another call or a project, and I come back, like, okay, did I actually look through and make sure I had all the MISC stuff or the under table mounts, like you mentioned, or back boxes that we're going to be using. So we'll try to factor that in. Like, again, we don't know exactly what we're going to be doing with the GC or what the environment's going to be like, but we'll try to have like a placeholder for a back box, like a Chief Pack 501 or something of that nature.
Right. On that topic, because you mentioned the 501, are you guys, because we are where I work, are you guys, would you consider you have standardized on using those in-wall type boxes for most flat panel installations now?
We do that for a lot. In fact, we have one client who they're very particular about aesthetics. So they actually have wall recessor for all their displays, and they're on articulating mounts with a back box. Just not necessarily to have them articulating in the room, but just so they're flush against the wall. Yeah. They don't even want them sticking out at all.
Yeah.
So it's a law.
And in those, you typically don't put in. You don't add the in-wall box because you've got the recessed niche, right? That kind of adds to it, and you just have to build the wall out even deeper to add that in-wall box into the niche that's already been.
Yeah, it depends on the application. Sometimes we'll have we did some Chief, what was the PDRW, or there's so many of them, but there was a articulating mount. We had the 501 that went along with that, and to get the nice and clean for the install.
Yeah.
And the GC to put a receptacle right there in that box too. Yeah. But I have recently looked at the Middle Atlantic Proximity series now, where they've got either a fixed bracket or they actually have the one that slides in and out from behind the display. I just spent a lot of time for a customer who want to get away from ceiling boxes, going with that behind the display. But I did some CAD reviews, and they couldn't really fit everything they want to cram back there behind the display. So we came up with a compromise of some of it was under table, a little bit was behind the display, and it ended up working out pretty nice. So
yeah, nice.
I just wanted to make sure it was actually serviceable, because no tech wants to go there, or have to get 2 people to take a display off the wall just to get the stuff behind the display.
Right, yeah.
So, versus getting a ladder,
a couple bucks. Yeah, that's for saving a couple bucks up on the front end. Relegates you to, enslaves you to having to make every service call, a 2-man service call instead of a 1 guy.
Exactly.
So that's what we always tell clients. So going back, kind of, I got tangentialized on the in-wall box thing.
That's
just
right.
because I was curious. But going back to the detail parts and pieces that go into a quote, do you find that even despite your best efforts, some of those little product accessories sometimes slip through the cracks and don't make it out on site, either don't get added to the equipment list in time or just get plain forgotten?
I'd be lying if I say that didn't happen. Especially at the pace that we go at. I mean,
Sure.
we go through a lot of projects here.
Yeah, I bet.
But uh, typically, that can be handled with a kickoff. We'll review it with a tech or project manager, say, hey, what about this? Or we'll be, I work very closely with one of our project managers for a particular client.
Mm-hmm.
And we will have our own kickoff meetings, and we'll actually sit there and we'll do all the product releases. So we'll have our bill of materials, we'll do the releases off of that. And then if something was already, on hold for engineering review or for color, whatever, the two of us will sit there and just boom, 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 line by line, make sure we've got it all there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Including, the sales guy didn't put those little locking tethers on there again, or the display port adapters that the customer wants, again.
Right.
So we'll
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
um,
But those meetings, are you saying those typically happen day one of install or a little bit before?
it'll be before, because that'll be for the release. So that's when we're ordering gear.
Mm,
So that's well before the actual install, which is good, because that gives us
got
a
it.
chance
Got it.
to, if there's a, oh no, we
Yeah.
forgot that, then it gives us a little bit of time to actually get something in without overnight fees.
Got it. Got it. How do you guys keep on point with making sure those, what do you call them, pre-meetings or
A kickoff.
not kick, are they you call them kickoffs? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So we'll typically have a kickoff, hopefully, with a salesperson. So, we're not flying blind. We would try to get information out of their head, like what was the intention? We have the scope of work in front of us, but tell us a little bit more about the nuances of the job and what you guys
And
talked about.
that happens pretty soon, or as soon as possible, usually after getting the PO. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah, we try
Okay.
to do that right away. So again, if we're missing information, like there's been instances, for example, where there's going to be owner furnished PCs and there's going to be 6 video outputs going to the switch or whatever. Okay, but we need to define, are those 6 discrete computers with one output, or two computers with multi-head outputs, or we got to figure out what we're doing in terms of the rack space and where everything's going.
Sure.
So we try to get all that information there, and then we'll do an internal one with the project manager, myself, once I've gotten through drawings, and we'll order the gear from that point.
Oh, sort of a post engineering kickoff.
Yeah, just
Or
it kind of
review.
brings
I
the
guess
project
that'd be
manager.
more of a design review, right?
It is kind of a design review, but
Okay.
it's more of a, like, again, when we're doing the equipment release, it gives us a chance to sit down and we'll look at drawings. And what I love about doing drawings too is we have CAD people that will do that too, but when the engineers are doing it, it's another chance for us to scrub the design.
Sure.
And I'll go like, well, wait a second, how are we actually getting from this codec to this, or something of that nature, or how are we extending USB, or stuff like that.
Okay. Okay. For those times when the little things do fall through the cracks and for whatever reason, and your install guys are the ones to really be the first to find out what's missing. What are the ramifications as far as like time and cost? Like what happens to that little part that would have been $25 plus a couple dollars shipping, when if ordered at the right time, what happens to that when it has to be rushed to keep the project on time? And
Yeah, certainly there's going to be overnight charges if you need it. If the guys are already on site and they have to finish by a certain time and it's got to get there, it's got to get there. So again, that's why I try to have those checklists up front to try to prevent that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So
that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I read an article once by a process management consultant that focuses on AV. His name's Brad Malone. There's another interview. I interviewed him. I'll put the link to that in the show notes as well. But he has an article on LinkedIn. If you look up his name, he wrote an article called "The $10 Screw." And
Yeah.
He spends all day talking with, you know, AV integrators specifically about their process and things that are, you know, what's real versus what's perceived by management as being, you know, um, the case. He just, he sees it like all day long, talking to the actual technical team that deploys the stuff
Mm.
and is in the trenches, kind of having this happen to him. But yeah,
Sure.
exactly what you're saying is totally right. Just the cost just balloon, and you know it's a dumpster fire as everyone scrambles to try to, you know, get it on time and
Yeah.
you know, drop what they're doing to figure out A, what it is they're missing in the first place, and B, how to get it. And
Right. Yeah, especially if you're talking about a custom shelf, like a
oh
Mid-Atlantic RSA shelf for a particular device. We don't do too many of those anymore.
yeah,
But if they haven't been ordered, that's a custom item, and that's basically a return trip. You put in something temporary
yeah,
and
right,
then go back. So
right.
get that.
Well, even stuff that can't just be, you know, sourced at your local hardware or electronics
Sure.
store, you know, something that can only be ordered from that manufacturer.
Right.
And you know, it's you know, you're in the same boat really.
You know,
Um,
you raise a good point on that, because as of late, we've been finding that local Home Depots and Lowe's are not providing threading services for NTP,
oh
you know,
really?
for pipe, like for projection or
Hmm.
LCD mounting and stuff.
Hmm.
So you really need to be sure how far, how long that thing's got to be uh, anymore,
Oh,
depending on where
interesting.
you're at. Because our guys are going to some cities and like, no, we don't do that anymore. We're like, oh,
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Holy cow. I don't know if the same holds true for California, but that's interesting. Okay.
yeah. I got a quick anecdote going back to your
Yeah.
kind of the bean counting and the $10 screw.
Yep.
My previous employer, they would actually have us count up how many connectors we needed based on the project or the drawing. So
Oh
they
gosh.
were burning engineer time to go,
Hmm.
oh, I need 5 ENCs here, I need a couple of 3.5 millimeters here, versus
Yeah.
just having tech stock. It
Yeah.
was crazy. So,
Oh my gosh.
uh, fortunately, we do not do that here. We got our guys with what they need.
Yeah, really. Yeah. It sounds like you got a pretty tight system that
Yeah,
you
we got a
developed
great
over 5
setup here,
years.
and I'm fortunate too that the techs we have here, they're really cool to work with, and they'll, you know, if we run into a situation where you're like, oh, we didn't order that, you know, I don't get someone screaming on the phone. They're cool, they're level-headed, you know, they show a little bit of grace and mercy because they get it. So nobody's perfect.
Right. Right. Oh man. So that's cool. I want to transition topics a little bit, but I want to do a sort of a conversational palate cleanser as we transition.
Sure.
It's not related to the rest of the conversation. But what's something that most people would be surprised to learn about you?
Surprise, learn about me in terms of other interests or hobbies or.
Yeah, this is where the interesting stuff comes in. This is where I, you know, find that, you know, mild-mannered guy actually, you know, his favorite hobby is, you know, skydiving.
I was just
You
gonna say skydiving.
know?
um, in my young single wild days, when I could travel, just as an individual, I saw, this goes way back into the early 2000s when the helmet cam videos were like really grainy MPEG-1, like old stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And I happened to come across a video for this ride in Fruita, Colorado, like Grand Junction area, Western Colorado, this trail called Joe's Ridge. And I was so intrigued by it, I actually visited a friend of mine out in Breckenridge. We drove out there and checked it out. And I'm not kidding, I'm bombing down this hill laughing like Beavis because I'm sitting over the rear tire. I'm going down like this. And the trail is maybe a foot and a half wide, and it just shoots down on either side.
Oh,
It
gee.
was amazing.
Oh, man.
So yeah, that was a thrill and a half.
Matt courts death in his younger years.
Yes. But now in my tame adult years as a husband and father, I'm working on a library or a demo reel of character voices for children's videos at this point. So it's
Really?
something I've always had fun goofing around with. Like when my stepson was younger and we were reading books for school for him, and I would just find myself reading with him and to him in different characters, depending on the character and the region and the country or whatever it was.
Yeah, yeah,
Just
trying
made
to
it
fake
so
that
much fun.
Austrian accent or that
Yeah, yeah,
English or whatever it was. Yeah,
exactly. And then Sean Connery would start slipping out here and there, something like that. So that's just something I'm doing just for fun and for sanity when I'm not working. So
that's cool. That's cool. That's very cool, actually. I did the same thing when my kids were little. Actually, I tried to voice the stuff I was reading to them.
yeah,
Um,
it's fun.
so as a like me as a AV engineer, I'm guessing you probably get um, approached a lot online by recruiters,
Hmm.
and I'm curious how you typically handle those, and more importantly, or specifically, is there anyone that you've run across that actually provides some sort of value um, to the the person who is, the engineer who is not looking for a job? They found someone who's actually providing value um, to people who aren't actively looking, because I find that that's sort of the main source of frustration for myself, is that there's just not a lot of um, valuable content, or any kind of helpful insights being offered by most recruiters, at least that I encounter, um, when you're not in a state of actually needing to look for another job,
Hmm.
to keep them actually top of mind, as a helpful resource
Hmm.
when or if you do need them sometime down the road.
Yeah, I try to be courteous or professional about it. And if I'm not looking, I'll just say, hey, thanks for uh, checking in, but I'm not looking right now, but I know somebody that might fit this position. If it's someone I think will actually fit it, I've done that before where I was like, ooh, I know this would be a good fit for so-and-so.
Yeah.
But a lot of times they're vague. I've been cautioned by other people to kind of steer clear of them because they're kind of just looking for a commission. They're in for themselves, not so much for you. Um, so yeah, I usually will either deflect them or just say, sorry, no, I'm not interested, or just frankly, I can't relocate. I'm planted here.
Right, right.
Just be honest with them. Hey, I can't. Thanks for checking in though. Cause you don't want to, I don't want to burn bridges. Cause like you said, someday maybe I will need to be looking and, want to have that resource available.
Sure,
So,
sure.
but quite in all honesty, uh, LinkedIn is kind of cool, but the way I've found my jobs is through my own network of people I've actually worked with, whether it was a coworker or a client.
Yeah,
I've had
absolutely.
clients actually saying when a previous employer shut the doors on the whole group, I had one was a manufacturer rep, another
Hmm.
one was a former client. They're like, hey, check out this guy, and that's where I landed here. So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah, exactly. So I actually landed the place I'm currently at full time by just going through my professional um, contact list. I,
mhm,
highlighting the people I would consider, industry friends, and
yeah,
just send them a personalized email telling them, what I was doing, what the situation was, and that I was looking, and things tend to go pretty fast and smoothly from there. But
yeah,
I think if I could, um, if I could offer, something, that if a recruiter was listening to this, I would say, just if you've connected with someone on LinkedIn, and just provide articles to help them be better at the places, make more of an impact, and stand out, you know in the places they currently work, so you're actually providing them, content that's helpful when they're not looking. So
mhm,
you'll be top of mind when and if they are. Yeah. Um, so last question as we kind of wrap this up. If you could go back in time to when you started in AV, let's say to when you started professionally in AV
mhm.
as a career, and give yourself, your younger self, only one piece of advice, what would that be?
I would say absorb as much experience as you possibly can. Because when I was a tech at SeaWorld, when Ohio still had a SeaWorld, I was mostly focused on audio production, sound design, and the laser aspect of things. In hindsight, I wish I had spent more time up in the video realm, because we had a pretty cool video booth, video wall, some of those types of things as well. And also some of the control programming I could have had access to for some of the encounters or exhibits. I mean, it was pretty much sky was the limit there. You got the keys to the park and you just went wild. You had all these toys to your exposure. So I think that would be probably the most important piece.
Okay, so stare less at the lasers, look more at the equipment.
Yeah, don't be so focused on the lasers, no pun intended, and just explore as much as you can, and then, you know, find your niche from there. The other one, I know you said only one, but I would have to say a second one, professionally. I'm going to cheat. Is co-op or intern. I know too many people that have never done a co-op or an internship, and it's so much easier to find a job, and it's a win-win for an employer because they can check you out, and you can check out not just the field but the employer too. And if it's a good fit, boom, you got something right out of school. Hopefully.
Sure. So for the student, differentiate between co-op and an internship.
Well, co-op is typically used more from an engineering standpoint. Let's say, like my undergrad was in manufacturing engineering, so you want to do a co-op with a manufacturing firm, be it, you know, a Honda or a Parker Hannifin, something like that. Internships, I think, are typically more used in the realm of media. In our industry, let's say you're doing like a film or multimedia production, you would get an internship at a studio, hopefully paid, or it could be for credit for school. So I think that could be a differentiator too, is, you know, are they paid or not? Co-ops are typically well-paid jobs for a summertime or a semester, if you will.
Got it. Makes sense. Well, cool. This has been real fun, Matt. Like always, I'm glad to actually share some of your insight with others out there in Pro AV. But just as a last question, just a fun fluff question as we before we wrap. Think of your top 10 movies. Okay, top 10. Which one? Name one of them that you would consider underrated or not very well known.
Oh man. Can't say The Matrix.
That's a little bit too mainstream.
Yeah. Oh man. Could it be a documentary?
It could be a documentary.
All right. Well, I'm not like a huge environmental advocate, but I would say Gas Hole and Gas Land are a couple that kind of stand out for me.
Okay.
Those are on Netflix.
They are both. I was going to ask, are either of them on Netflix?
Yeah.
Okay.
Those are pretty eye-opening in terms of what's going on.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm getting some good watching recommendations from asking this question. So that's cool. Right on. All right. Well, Matt, thank you so much for coming on, and we will talk later.
All right. Thanks a lot, Jeremy.
All right.
Take care.
Bye.